Welcome to NHA Today, the podcast of the National Health Association, one of the oldest and most respected health science organizations in the world. I'm your host, Dr. Stephan Esser, physician, lifestyle medicine advocate, and a fourth-generation plant-based eater with the NHA quite literally in my blood. Each week, we bring you real science, honest conversations, and practical tools to help you become the CEO of your own health. Let's get into it. Hey, it's Dr. Esser, and welcome to the NHA Today podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Christa Barfield, who's a healthcare professional turned farmer and food access leader and the founder of Farmer Jawn, a 128-acre regenerative organic farm in Pennsylvania. After 10 years in healthcare administration, she radically transformed her own life and now is a passionate advocate working to make organic, healthy food accessible and working to address the many challenges to eating healthy for urban dwellers. Christa, welcome to the show. Glad to have you today.
Happy to be here, Dr. Esser. Thank you for having me.
You know, I'm absolutely fascinated by people's journeys, and your transition is quite a transition. I want to ask you a question. Was there a moment in your life that was just like, boom, punctuated, I need to change? Or was this like a process that happened for you?
Yeah, I would say a mixture. Yes, and it was a little mix of the two. But initially, working in healthcare, I worked for one of the largest ophthalmology practices in the world. Highly sought after care. People came from all over the place. So being on the back end of the administration side, there was a lot of responsibility with that, managing my own team and also taking home work with me, in order to make all that run well. I got to a point, I walked into work on January 2nd, 2018. I read an email from my boss, and I just was like, this is not the life that I'm supposed to have. And I sent back a resignation reply and gave them 3 weeks notice. And 3 weeks later, to the day, actually, I was on my way to a country called Martinique in the French Caribbean by myself. And that is where agriculture found me.
Wow. So, I mean, I've heard Martinique is a very special place. I actually had some friends in med school from there. And when you were there, walk us through a little bit about that headspace you were in. Because many of us go through these challenges and the big transitions in our lives, right? Whether it be work related or family or divorce or whatever. Like there you were in Martinique, and tell us more. Like what went on?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, going by myself was the true unlock to this. And I was turning 30. So January 2nd, I quit my job. January 19th, I turned 30. And then January 22nd was when I got on this plane by myself. First time out of the country ever. I chose the Airbnb because I had a swimming pool. And what I got what I was receiving was the fact that this was owned by a family of Black farmers. And it was not a part of their profile on the Airbnb. But this was the gift that was honestly being given to me. And I got a chance to just jump into their day-to-day operation. I didn't know what I was doing, just helping them pack boxes of fruits, vegetables, and herbs. I saw them take an envelope, put it on top of each box. They had a family's name on it. And then a few hours later, I saw people dropping 20-euros in an envelope, taking their box, and then heading off and saying "à bientôt," which is "see you soon" in French. And I was like, I love this. I don't know what's happening, but I just resigned from my job, and I'm seeing people take food and leave money. And I was very intrigued by that whole thing. And now I also had the time that I was giving myself. That was the gift I was giving myself back, was some time to figure out what my next steps are going to be. And that's why I also say agriculture found me, because it wasn't something I was seeking.
You know, so many people are living that life, aren't they? And they're kind of just busy, constantly working the emails and this, and never even a chance to look up at the sky and to pause. And it sounds like you found that moment in time for you that really rerouted your life. Yeah.
It's so true. It's so true. Yeah.
Now, were you raised in a healthy household, or was this a transition for you to eat healthier and begin this journey?
It's interesting, that word healthy, right? Because I'm raised by a healthcare professional. My mother's a nurse practitioner. And I would say that we ate what was traditional, meals like I was raised on cream of wheat. I was raised on collard greens and fried chicken. These are things that it's a lot of tradition that comes into the way that I grew up eating. So necessarily, was it healthy? Maybe in some ways, but also you're taking ingredients and you're adding extra oil to them and extra salt,
Right.
So it's such a mixture where food is deeply traditional.
Yeah.
So I would say, again, that's another yes and, but there was never a focus on where my food came from. Like, we went to the grocery store, but I do remember seeing my mother buy whole fish, right? So she would take whole fish from the fish market and she would gut them herself. I watched her do that whole process and then batter them and fry them. So the connection of origin of food, I didn't always really have. Like I didn't know who our farmer was, but I knew who the
Right,
fishmonger was,
right.
if you will. And I knew that we got everything else from the grocery store. So
Yeah, it's interesting. You make me think of that phrase when you were talking about our cultural heritages, because everybody has a place they come from and start. And I think it's a Kim Williams quote, right? Don't let your culture hold your heart hostage when he talks about
mm,
heart health. That many people kind of identify with certain cultural patterns, but sometimes they may not be the healthiest for us. And then there's that transition that occurs. When you decided to become a farmer working in this space, were you intimidated? I mean, or was it just, it
really?
felt right? It just felt right.
No. Yeah, it felt right. Like I do think a lot about the where food comes from
Mhm.
and how food even gets to these stores, right? And there's a farmer somewhere behind that. And so if we go 100 years ago, the majority of farms in our country were managed and run by Black people, by enslaved Africans that came here. So there's definitely an ancestral connection that I have, that this is a return for me, putting my hands in soil, being the farmer of the community in a way that isn't extractive. And that is a great story to be able to return to and put some positivity on. So I welcome that. And the intimidation is also not something I've felt. I've never had imposter syndrome either. I just put one foot in front of the other. I started very small, right? So I started in a 4 by 6 foot greenhouse in my own backyard, which was all concrete. And I figured out how to put soil into a cup and put seeds in it, water and sun, and there was a plant. So I started in a very rudimentary way. I didn't seek out any real teachings, but just decided to do until I became. And that's kind of what happened. Like even volunteering at other farms, you don't get the skill sets you need to say, like, I'm going to run a farm company. I'm going to be a farmer. You get to put your hands in soil and weed, and you get to like maybe pack vegetables in bags, but you don't understand the fundamentals of what it is to be a farmer. So I just took some common sense and also that connection to the ancestors, as well as the business knowledge and the business degree that I had already attained, and mixed that all together and failed my way to where we are today.
I mean, to go from a 4 by 6, little greenhouse to now 128 acres, and that's quite a transition. And tell us where your farm is located.
Yeah, so we are in 3 counties in Pennsylvania. We have one in Philadelphia area that also has a retail store connected to it, currently being built. If you go a little further out into an area called Westchester, it's about 40 minutes outside the city. It is our largest farm parcel, which is 123 acres, with its own retail store on it that operates 6 months out of the year. And then closer to actually where I grew up and where I live, in an area called Elkins Park in Pennsylvania, is right outside of Philadelphia. And that is a 1 acre training farm where I really got started on a larger space in that area.
Nice. And so we hear it around the country, different CSAs. Would you call yours a CSA at this point?
Yeah, that's actually how we began. So Farmer Jawn started as a CSA model. We started with 10 families. Went on Facebook one day, and this was more so my launch. And I was like, hey, I've started a farm, and we are doing a CSA, which is community supported agriculture. And in order for that to work, you need community to know about you and want to buy your food from you ahead of time. And so it's a really beautiful model that farmers have been able to use worldwide to connect to community, to allow them to, buy into the fact that there will be vegetables
Right.
soon if you give us your money now to help support the growth of them, so we can pay people well, so we can buy seeds, so we can do all of that. I promise you vegetables when they get here.
Such a cool model. There's one in Tampa where I went to medical school, and I used to love going out there and seeing the interrelationships of the people, right? Working the land together and sharing the
Yes.
produce. It was a beautiful, beautiful model. Have you been growing like that in your numbers over time? Do you feel like the
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of getting more and more traction?
Yeah, I mean, we've been flowed for sure. We started at 10, we went up to 50 from the 10 over the years, and then we went to 100, then went to 200, and then we dropped back down to 50. And then we were like, okay, let's go. We're going to settle at 100. So that's where we are right now, 8 years in. And essentially I started Farmer Jawn in January of 2020 officially. So our first CSA has really been going on since since 2020 in January. So yeah, we're 6 years in now, and we are now settled at the 100-person mark. It's kind of our sweet spot because as the business grew around the CSA, we have retail stores now, we have products, we do a lot more than we did just having a CSA. So just for a capacity, we are at the 100 mark, and that's our sweet spot.
Congratulations.
Oh,
It's
thank you.
neat to see that growth. I know it's a lot of love, a lot of passion, a lot of energy poured in to make it
Yes,
happen. One of the things that I loved looking at your website, is kind of this multi-pronged approach, right? Not just here, come buy some produce. You talked about production, access, education, awareness, as well as lifestyle. Really kind of sounds like you're trying to create a movement almost around this whole, is that kind of your vision?
absolutely. I want people to recognize that when I say agriculture is the culture, which is ultimately the slogan of our organization, but it means so much more. It's like everything you touch every day, from the beverages that you're drinking, the clothes that you're wearing, even the kitchen table that you're eating on is thanks to a farmer or a steward of land somewhere, somehow, at
Right.
some time.
Yeah.
And we don't often think of that. And this is every day we're interacting with these things. You got to eat, you got to drink, you got to have clothes on, and you live in a house and you eat on some kind of table. All of these are agricultural products, and there's no connection that people even think about a farmer. So it's really just so that people can be cognizant that if there are no farmers, there's no food. And it's a reminder to people. So that is what I'm building. It's just recognizing from whence we come. And farming is a part of everybody's lineage, and it's a reminder of
Right.
that too.
Well, I mean, I love that concept there. There's that whole interconnectivity. I mean, there's so many people live in isolation, but you ask the kid, where'd the apple come from the store? And
Yes.
it's like, well, no, that's not where it came from. Right?
Yeah.
That came from somewhere else. And who was involved with that process and how did it get to you? And that, it makes me think actually of food waste for a moment in America, which is some of the studies suggest it's enough to feed multiple other countries how much we throw away. And
Yeah.
just thinking about that appreciation for the work, the effort, the time, the energy, the love that went into growing that, right? And preparing
Yes.
that. Yeah, it's,
Even our own
yeah,
health.
yeah,
It directly connects back to that. The food waste issue is also a part directly correlates to the depreciating health that we have in America.
yeah.
And people don't understand what a broccoli plant actually looks like. Everybody wants the floret. Like that's what they're
Ah,
looking for. They're looking for the flower, but the broccoli plant is so much more than that. The flower is actually the smallest part of that plant. I want to
mhm.
see chefs even, because that's really the people who consumers are looking to see how things are prepared. I mean, think about how Food Network has become such the behemoth that it is. It's because people like watching people prepare food.
Right,
And
right.
so that to me is like, okay, the onus is like, yes, the farmers are make all of this go. They're the origin of the system, but the next step to the food system is the people who prepare it. And so I'd love to see people start taking the broccoli leaves of plants and taking the tomato leaves and making pesto and doing just really encouraging things to people so they can feel like they can do this. They can actually
Yeah.
work with the whole plant as well.
You talk in our society, we hear quite a bit about quote sustainable farming, right?
Mm.
And I saw that some on your website as well, talking about sustainability. Can you unpackage that phrase a little bit for us today? Like when you think about sustainability, what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I always say when people ask me this question about sustainability, people need to recognize that sustainability, it can actually sustain if it's not profitable. So from the first and foremost is that's how I look at it. And everything that we're doing to take care of the planet, because that's how most people connect to sustainability, is they're like, oh, how do we care for the planet? But without recognizing that people and planet are a part of the sustainability. People plus planet equals sustainability. In order to care for people, you actually have to have a model that's going to work for everybody. And the other aspects of sustainability environmentally, it really directly ties into people understanding that the food that they get is how it was grown. So like where's the water coming from? Are we harvesting rain? Are we simply pouring water directly from the municipal water system? Are we using animals within our farm system? Are we using their manure to help increase the make compost for our soil, increasing that organic matter? Are we taking plants that we harvested last year and simply pulling them out of the ground, disturbing the soil and the roots and disturbing all the microorganisms down there? Or are we chopping it and just letting it lay so we can build the soil matter? So there's just so much that goes into it, but it's about really ultimately saving the farmer money so that they can still be there the following year, and making sure that they have a team to be able to care for those plants and that food, those animals, and you can't do that unless there's, actual revenue streams coming in. So to me, sustainability is profitability. And what are all the ways in the business that we can make sure that the business remains profitable? Thus,
Right.
it will be sustainable.
And I guess that's where you bring your experience in business to the table, right? Which a lot of farmers don't have that exposure and that
Yes.
experience. So, definitely needed. I've known some small farmers over the years, and it's a real challenge. Keep those small family owned farms running, right? Especially with the big industrial farms coming in and the different
Yeah.
techniques and technologies they use. And then, with that performance, et cetera. So I think it's wonderful that you're doing this, not only for the fact of getting healthy food to people, but I love that educational aspect as well. I'm
Yeah.
curious, do you bring any schools out, any children's schools
Mhm.
out, yeah, for field trips and things like that to experience?
Yeah,
Yeah.
schools, but also adults. We actually host a field trip every Saturday at our farm when we're in season. And we at our own expense, because I think it's so important. Like being 45 minutes away from the central area of
Mhm.
Philadelphia isn't as easy just for anybody to hop in a car and drive down, right? So it's like we want to make it as accessible as possible. So we charter a school bus every single Saturday to bring people from the Philadelphia region down to our farm. And we always are hosting schools. We have a director of education and research on our team whose sole focus is to engage as much as community as possible. So we have, yes, a lot of children that come on over, and we also have a lot of adult groups. Even board, we hosted a board of an organization that just wanted to do a board retreat, and we hosted them at our farm. So
Nice.
there's something every age group is able to get out of this. Even adults don't know where much of the food that they're eating comes from. So we're able to engage people at every level.
I love it. Hey, it just struck me. The next Christa Barfield might be listening to this podcast right now. And if she or he were, what would you say to them as far as, what are the greatest things about the transition you've had and what are the toughest things?
Yeah, it's definitely a mix, but the biggest advice that I always have for folks is a business plan. And to your point of what you mentioned about farmers not often having the business experience down packed, but they know how to till a field, they know how to get seeds, they know how to get sweet corn to come up, all those things that are also really important fundamentally, but the business is the foundation. And when we're talking about one of the most difficult things it has been to become a farmer and grow this business is always funding. Access to capital is the biggest thing for any business, but especially in agriculture, where we're seeing farms go bankrupt at a very alarming rate. The rate of the death rate, even suicide rate for agriculturalists has gone up over the years, and that's simply because it's not supported as how it should be. A lot of our food is being grown in other countries and then shipped here. Even a lot of our organic food, the food that's supposed to be free of chemicals, most of that doesn't even come from our own US soil. So, it's definitely making sure you're setting yourself up to have a true plan that can work, that you can be able to present to someone when you're going for funding.
Nice, nice. So having that plan, and then you mentioned there about the emotional stressors and the challenges,
Mm.
the difficulties. How do you fill back up your bucket when you're kind of
Community.
pouring out?
Yeah, it goes back to this. Agriculture is a communal sport. I always like to say it really is, and people want to be involved. It's interesting to see now how farming is becoming more and more popular. In other ways, there's agro-tourism, there's agro-hospitality. There's all these ways that people are wanting to tap into being on a farm, being connected, and that solace and that taking a break. What it means to so many others when they come, they're like, "Oh, I get to just relax and walk through nature," but that's not what the farmer is typically
Right.
experiencing. So it's what I do for myself is really get to put my hands in soil. Years ago when I first started the farm, I was the one that was primarily doing the farming. There was really just me. I was building my team. Now that I have such a larger team and that are really the farmers that are doing the work every single day. I do a lot more traveling. I do a lot more fundraising, to be able to keep it all going. And when I get a moment to just be on the farm and just walk it and put my hands in soil, I literally just did that this past weekend, and it was bliss, and it was the reconnection that I need. So yeah, it's true. Putting your hands in soil is definitely a way, scientifically proven, that it can help boost your endorphins and help with decreasing stressors. Soil is really powerful, and that's why we work so hard to protect it.
I had a recent interviewee that I was talking with, and I asked them this question. I'm going to ask you the same one. Let's visualize we've got a 52-year-old female with two kids who lives in an apartment somewhere in the middle of the city, and she has a tiny little porch area. That's about it, like a little balcony or something. And she wants to try to grow something.
Mm.
What do you tell her?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I always say is take one of the things that your family eats that you buy constantly. Let's look at all of them and then let's figure out what's going to be the best one that you no longer have to buy again. And one of the easiest things, just so people can have that confidence that they can grow something, is going to be scallions, green onions. Very simply, you buy some scallions one time and you'll be able to use the same scallions for 4 or 5, 6 times by simply putting it in a glass of water. So it's visually appealing. Drop it in a glass of water with the white ends and the roots in the glass and continue to cut it, and you'll constantly have fresh green onions that essentially you're growing. And that's just one entry point. And there's a number of others. I mean, kale, greens, potatoes. You can do those in small container gardens, even strawberries.
Yeah, but you called it out there. I love that word you said, confidence, right? Because how many
Yeah.
people are, nervous? They've never grown anything in their life and they'd love to try something. I just seen that. I find for myself that looking at something growing is so balancing in the sense of even my own perspective on my own life, right? Because you see something grow and you see something die, or you see, and you recognize, wow, I'm not here forever. And just
It's
like
true. It's the
being around those
pruning.
plants. Yeah, no, it's a beautiful thing. I also love that visual. It's like, unless you plant that seed into a place of darkness and trouble and difficulty, you don't get anything beautiful. And I visualize in my head you kind of stepping away from what you were doing and planting yourself, and now look at the good that's grown out of it, which is really cool to hear and see.
Indeed.
I saw on your website one thing that was intriguing to me, and that was something you were calling a corner Jawn. Tell me,
Yes.
tell me about that.
So Corner Jawn, Jawn and it, Jawn is a Philly word. If you're not familiar, I want people to know that it's Jawn. So not the name John. But Jawn means person, place, or thing. It is in the Webster's dictionary. So you use it, and that's a Jawn over there. Or I'm going to that Jawn, or can you pick up the Jawn? Like, it's just a word that's thrown into to be anything. And so when I was thinking about the name Farmer Jawn, it was like, I need to figure out a word that people can connect with and recognize. And the whole premise of it is, if you want to grow your own food, that's wonderful. Like, we can give you the skills to know how. You should be able to do that. But if you don't want to grow your own food because obviously there's not enough time and you work and all these things, you should at least know who your farmer is. And so at first it was a love story to my city. And so when I decided to then want a smaller footprint for our store, or for our produce to be sold out of, in what year was that? 2020, I took a walk in Germantown section of Philadelphia, which is very inner city. And I went to 5 different corner stores, and I wanted to ask them if they would be interested in stocking our produce. And everybody said no. And they all had the same reason. It was a business decision. It would die on the shelf. They didn't think that people would come to them to purchase. And I just thought about all the food deserts and food swamps that corner stores typically make up, a lot of that food swamp culture where there's all types of food around, but it's not anything nutritious. And I was like, I want to change that. I want to make food a few walks away from people's home that's nutritious. And we can do that because we are the farmers that's growing it. So Corner Jawn is a food as medicine concept corner store that we're building the first prototype of right now in the unhealthiest section of Philadelphia, the one with the poorest health outcomes.
Yeah,
And we're going to see how well it performs by being able to also be supported with this neighboring community of lots of people, transplants that are coming in that have
right,
paying jobs. Our communities are starting to morph into, you can't look at a spot and say like, oh, there's only people that make less money here. No, there's all of our neighborhoods are so mixed. On the
right,
same
right.
block, we are seeing that there are mixed income. And so Corner Jawn is meant to support everybody in that neighborhood without leaving out the people who make less, which is often what happens.
I love
When a
it.
large commercial grocery comes into a community, they often aren't priced well enough so that the people that make less can participate. The people that work there can participate. This design is to help debunk all of that.
Beautiful. Well, I hope it's very successful.
Thank you.
Because the reality is access to food is a major issue for a lot of people. And then I think,
Mhm.
but then when we get to the next level, even if people have access, like a lot of my patients that I see in clinic, they have plenty of money and they have great access to food. but they're still
Yes.
eating the ultra processed, what I call
Choice.
food
Yeah.
like substances of abuse, because it's not even
Mm,
real food. It's been engineered to kind of addict them. And I think what we've seen right in our history as well as in the literature scientifically is that the more people struggle with, let's say, depression, anxiety, it just kind of feeds on itself, doesn't it? So those food like substance abuse, and they make you more depressed, and your dopamine spikes, and you need it again, and then it's just this whole addictive pattern, which just leaves you spiraling out of control. And so I think, if we can get those people on healthier food and access to it, what a beautiful place to start. And I really hope
mm,
that's successful.
thank you.
You know, you're going to be, I think, speaking at the NHA annual conference in June of this
I
year.
am.
And I don't want you to give away your topic, but can you give us a little sneak peek on what people might learn or hear from you?
Absolutely. We have something that I call the Farmer Jawn formula. And essentially, that's three main pillars of health that I live by, my business is run by, and it all centers back to how we all connect to this word health. And I break it down for everyone. And it comes back to food being medicine, and the small farmer will save the world, as I always like to say. So that it's going to be a really great talk that I'm excited to share.
Fantastic. Well, we're excited to hear you. And I really enjoyed spending time with you today. And thank you for taking time for us.
Thank you, Dr. Esser. It was great to be with you.
Thanks for joining me on NHA today. If this conversation added value to your life, share it with someone you care about, because that's how we grow this community and change the health of our nation, one conversation at a time. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere you listen. And for more resources, visit us at healthscience.org/podcast. Follow me on social media at Esser Health. I'd love to connect with you there. Until next time, be well, stay curious, and keep moving toward your most vital health.